Hey there, my name is Seth Gamba and I wrote the Northwestern Blues. And in this video, I'm going to do a little tutorial for you about how to do the strum picking part. At measure 29, the second violins and violas all switch over to picking, and then at 41, the first violins join, so all the violins and violas are playing their instrument with a pick at measure 41. So first thing, I'm just going to go through these parts. I'm going to play them for you so you can see how it's done, hear how it sounds, and then after that, I'll go back to some lesson sort of stuff on how to pull it off. So I'm going to start here at measure 29. I'm going to put a metronome on just to make sure it stays really steady. And here we go. This is the part at measure 29. And 1, 2, 3. And that ended at measure 40. So now I'm going to pick it up at measure 41 where the first violins would join, and it changes just a little bit. All right, so here it is at 41. And 1, 2, 3. All right, so that's the part from 29 to 40, and then from 41 on over to 52. All right, so now we're going to break it down how to do that part. You've really got three basic things that you're doing. You're playing a chord, or you're playing what's called a ghost, where you take your fingers and you just gently cover the strings, and it's just kind of a noise. All right, there are three chord positions. There's the first one that goes with a G7 chord, which is your one chord in the blues. It's a G, a B, and an F, so your teacher can explain more about what makes up a G7 chord. The G7 chord lasts for 4 measures, and this is just the blues. I'm explaining the blues to you right now. After 4 measures of the G7 chord, you're going to switch to a C7 chord, which you're going to play on your instrument a G, an E, and a B flat. You're leaving out the C. Your lower strings are going to provide the C. So I've got a C7 chord right there. You do the C7 chord for 2 measures. Then you come back to the G7 chord for 2 measures. And then you're going to go to a D7 chord, and you're only playing 2 notes of the D7 chord. This is a 5 chord for you. And this is an F sharp and a C. You play that for 1 measure. Then you go back to the C7 for 1 measure, and then you come back to the G7 for 2 measures. And that's the definition of the blues, that sequence of chords. Now, that might be a lot to remember. So hopefully your teacher will go over blues form with you, and that'll be a part of just how you listen to this song go by. Because the whole song is, in one way or another, a repetition of that chord pattern. It's less than you think when you're playing these chords, because really there is only one finger pattern. So to start off with the G7 chord, you have a first finger on a B, a second finger on an F natural, and of course if you're on a viola it'll be 1 string over. And you stick your open G with that and you've got it. To get the C7, you just move those 2 fingers down a half step. So now you're on a B flat and an E, and then you move them back. And now you're on a B and an F natural. When it's time for your D7 chord, you move them forward a half step, so you're on an F sharp and a C. Then you're going to come back to the half position. This is actually called half position. And that's your C7 chord. And then you just slide back into the first position. So you really only have to set your fingers like this, and then you slide back, you slide forward again, you go all the way back, and then you slide forward again. But you're just moving these 2 fingers. That's it, and they never change their relationship to each other. So if you've got that, then the fingering part of this is actually pretty easy once you get the hang of having those two fingers together. The trickier part of this, I think, is just getting the picking pattern. But once you've got the picking pattern, it's very repetitive. So it will come together pretty quickly. So you're going to take your guitar pick, and there's a couple of different ways to hold it. I like to hold mine with the dull end facing out. So I will put, let me see if I can show this to the camera. The sharp end of the pick will go along my thumb, and then I hold it like this with the dull end sticking out. Most people prefer to hold the pick like this with the sharp end pointing out. You can try it both ways, decide which way you like. Either way is fine. But I hold it like this. And there is, let's see if I can get this in the camera really good. When I strum down and when I strum up, there's a slight turn in the wrist. It's just a very slight turn in the wrist. So you're dragging the pick across the strings, and then you're dragging it the other way. So I hope that is showing up pretty well in the camera. I hope. So the first step is to not even worry about the left hand. Just cover up the strings and worry about the motion. So I'm going to put on a metronome. You should always practice this with a metronome just to make sure you're staying steady. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And this is the first step. Just getting the hang of going back and forth across the strings. And you're really worried about your G, D, and your A strings because those are what you're using for the chords. Don't worry about the E string. Don't worry about the C string. So try to get the G, the D, and the A. Just back and forth. So the trick is, once you get this back and forth motion, is you got to pick which times you strum. So it's really just a two-measure rhythm pattern that just repeats over and over again. And it repeats over and over again through this whole picking section with only a couple of exceptions. And you get down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up. But if you look at my hand, we'll try to keep that in the camera. My hand is just doing this. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. That's all my hand is doing. I get the rhythm by picking when to hit the strings and when to miss the strings. Here it goes now. Down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up. Just this. And I can pick or I can choose when I want to hit the strings. That's the first step, is don't even worry about playing the notes, just worry about that picking rhythm. Back and forth, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, up. That's really the whole thing. So I'm going to start at 29, and we're just going to go through that rhythm. It takes 4 repetitions of that main thing. When you get to the turnaround, which is where it goes, so let's just talk blues form for a second. 4 measures of your 1 chord, G7. 4. 2 measures of your 4 chord, the C7. 2 more measures of your 1 chord. Then you do the turnaround. When you go to the 5 chord, which is the D7 for 1 measure, and then you go to the C7 for 1 measure, and then you come back, that's called the turnaround. During the turnaround, the rhythm changes just a little bit because you're not dealing with 2 measure chunks anymore. You have these 1 measure chunks. So the rhythm changes just a little bit in the turnaround. So that's what we want to be careful with. So here we go. Starting at 29, we're just going to strum through the rhythm, no notes. And 1, 2, 3, down, down. That's 1. Here's the second one. The third one. The fourth one. Here's the turnaround. It changes. And back to the original. All right, you see how it's the same thing over and over again. And then the turnaround gets just the first half of it. The second half of the thing is really just about the same. It's the exact same rhythm pattern. The turnaround changes just slightly. So we're going to go through the measure 41 rhythm and look out for how it changes in the turnaround. But other than that, the picking pattern is the same. Here we go. Here's 41. 1, 2, rhythm only. Down, 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 up. The second one. The third one. The fourth one. The turnaround. The last one. See how it's the same. There's only 2 measures in that whole thing that are different. So you have the turnaround in the first half, the turnaround in the second half that are just slightly different. Okay, so now let's talk about putting the chord with it. So you're going to set your hand in position. And we've got 4 measures of the 1 chord, the G7, followed by 2 measures of the 4 chord, the C7, back to the 1 chord for 2 measures. Then you go to the 5 chord for 1 measure, and try not to play your G string in this one. If you can just get the F sharp and the C, that's what you really want. So you've got your 5 chord for 1 measure, back to your 4 chord in half position for 1 measure, and then back to your 1 chord for 2 measures. That's the blues. So here we go. This is measure 29. And a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 chord again. I'm moving to the 4 chord. Half position. Back to first position. Second position, the turnaround. Half position. First position. 41. And I'm actually messing up the rhythm a little bit when I try to talk at the same time, but I hope you get the idea. All right, so here's 41. 1, 2, 3, 4. Half position. Back. The turnaround. All right. So I hope you followed that, how really the main thing is just to keep this going back and forth, and it's repeating that rhythm and keeping track of where the turnaround is. And the left hand is really pretty easy. It's just the same thing, but you do have to move it to 3 different positions. So hopefully this is something helpful to you, and that you get the hang of this in a reasonable amount of time, and that you have fun playing the song. Thank you so much.